By the side of the river of life, up in the valley, how wonderful valley, we'll be free from all pain and all strain and all strife. There we shall live in the rose-tinted garden, neath the shade of our green tree. How I long for the paradise valley, where the beauty of heaven I'll see. Though your garden is rare, it is not to compare with the flowers that bloom in the garden above. In the midst of it grows, share its perfect sweet rose. 'Tis a wonderful flower we love. Up in the beautiful paradise valley, by the side of the river of life. Up in the valley, the wonderful valley, we'll be free from all strain and all strife. There we shall live in the rose-tinted garden, neath the shade of our green tree. How I long for the paradise valley, where the beauty of heaven I'll see.
O God, we come to worship you. O God, we come to praise your name. O God, we come to learn your word. O God, we sing our praise to you. O God, we come to worship you. O God, we come to praise your name. O God, we come to learn your word. O God, we sing our praise to you. O God, you are the only God. O God, we know we are the church. We gather here in Jesus' name. O God, we give our thanks to you. O God, we come to worship you. O God, we come to worship you.
Praise to the Lord, the Almighty, the King of creation. O my soul, praise him, for he is thy health and salvation. All ye who hear, now to his temple draw near. Join me in glad adoration. Praise to the Lord, who o'er all things so wondrously reigneth. Shieldeth thee under his wings, yea, so gently sustaineth. Hast thou not seen how thy desires have been granted in what he ordaineth? Praise to the Lord, who doth prosper thy work and defend thee. Surely his goodness and mercy here daily attend thee. Ponder anew what the Almighty can do, if with his love he befriend thee. Praise to the Lord, oh let all that is in me adore him. All that hath life and breath, come now with praises before him. Let the amen sound from his people again, gladly forever adore him.
Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, early in the morning our song shall rise to thee.
All right, Esther chapter 4. We got into the heart of the plot last week. Remember, we're talking about the rulers of the Persian Empire. Of course, you had these great world empires going back, of course, to the Egyptians, but the Assyrians, the Babylonians, and then now here in the 5th century BC, so about 450, 500 years before Christ, you have the Medo-Persian Empire is an alliance, and that's where the events take place here. Of course, the Jews have been in captivity. They were allowed to go back. Those that wanted to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the city and the temple, but many stay throughout the world, and that includes the Persian Empire now. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. There's estimated to be about 12 million Jews scattered throughout the Persian Empire. And so this book of Esther tells the story of a Jewish family, and particularly Esther, who becomes, of course, the queen. And she rises through the ranks, if you will. She gets chosen. We talked about the harem and this selection process, and it was, and so Esther is now queen. Mordecai is her uncle, but remember, they've kept their identity what? Secret, and it's justified because we were introduced to Haman, who is a high-ranking official, and remember, he's an Agagite, a descendant of Agag, the Amalekites that were utterly destroyed. Well, Saul was told to utterly destroy them, and he partially did, but so Haman is full of hatred towards, even though it's hundreds of years have been passed, it doesn't matter. And so Haman, when he finds out, remember in chapter 3 that Mordecai would not do what? Remember, Haman is exalted to this high-ranking position, and at the gate, what's everybody doing when Haman shows up? They're bowing down. Now, we think it's probably more than just, well, Mordecai, you've been in those situations. Not going to do it. No, not going to do it. And there's not any reason in particular other than, I don't want to, I don't like you. It could be that's what's going on. We don't know for sure. However, I think the indication is, and what we know about these guys, this gentleman is viewing himself in some sort of way, a high exalted position to receive some sort of glory worship. And Mordecai says, not going to do it. Worship the Lord your God and serve him only. But nonetheless, remember, it's told to Haman, and he finds out who it is, and that, of course, he is a Jew. And he looked for a way to destroy Mordecai's people. I mean, you talk about, that's why it's more deep-seated than just, he won't bow down to me. No, if that was the case, he'd just what? Kill Mordecai, right? But he wants to eradicate the Jewish people. You know, we know God's people throughout their history have been scattered. The Jewish people have been scattered, and they have faced opposition, persecution. And so we see this. Haman is going to manipulate King Xerxes. Remember, he's the ruling king at the time in the Persian Empire, and he's a petty himself, oversensitive. These rulers, what have we said many times? God is pulling back the curtain saying, this is who the world looks up to? Remember, he can't even get his wife to come into the banquet we talked about. Remember, Vashti says, nope, not going to, chapter 1. And then they come up with that childish law that says what? All the wives have to obey their husbands, right? These petty, weak men. That's what they are. And Xerxes is a weak man. But he's in a very difficult spot historically. I've given you that background because he's trying to, like his father, he's trying to occupy Greece. History, we know, is not going to work out so good for the Persians. They just had to have that islet at Peninsula, and it's not going to happen. And you know, of course, the great story of the 300 that are going to push back, and we know. So he's going to, Xerxes is going to have to rally support. We mentioned that chapter 1. He's giving a banquet, a feast. Remember, 180 days. He's paying. He's getting his high-ranking officials throughout his empire. He's getting them drunk. They're having this drunken festival. That's the context when he asked Vashti to come in and present herself. Some historians believe present herself with her royal crown and only her royal crown. And she says, no, not going to. It was an act of self-preservation, even though we want to moralize that story and make her out to be a great example for young girls. I'm not so sure about that, but she does have a courageous act that she does. And so we don't want to take her courage away from her one bit. But nonetheless, that sets up, she's out, deposed, and of course Esther will be chosen as the new queen, which she does become, we've talked about. So all that is to lead now Haman's plot to eradicate. And what he's going to do, he's going to appeal to the king's greed. We talked a little bit, I think we talked about this. Yeah. So still catching us up. Remember, Xerxes is fighting a military campaign with Greece. And what do you need when you fight war? Money. You need money. You need soldiers. And what do people often not want to give up? When the citizens of whatever country, do they want to give up their money? And do they want to give up their sons? No. So he doesn't have the moral courage to stand up, and so he does the drunken festival. And now Haman, boy, is Haman sharp? He's sharp. He knows what he's doing. Remember, what does he say when he comes to the king? There's a certain what? He doesn't even give the what? The specifics of who they are, the Jews. He says, there's a certain people, and they do what to your law? And that's partially what? Not true. They're not. They're not insurrectionists. They're not out to overtake the Persian law. So it's not true. Now, are they distinct and different? Yes. So Haman knows exactly. Then he says, I'm going to hire and pay into the royal treasury men who will assassinate and eradicate these people. And that's exactly what chapter 4 indicates. I mean, apparently there's two things going on here. Haman is wealthy. But more than that, I'll tell you what I think, what historians think is really happening. Here's the ugly truth of ancient history and war and conquering and conquest. When you defeat people and kill them and murder them, what do you do to their possessions? You take them. So war is what? Big business. It's profiting. Somebody, when I was younger, he thought, why do countries always go to war? And why? It's big business. There's a lot of bullets and jackets and bombs and tanks and planes. Hello, I'm just telling you. I'm just telling you. So the way it was in ancient times is we will take who we possess. We will take their royalty. We will take their best of their men and women. We will take their possessions. We will take... we will profit off of this. Yeah. The Nazis aren't the only ones who've done that, and this has been through the centuries. So what likely is happening is Haman is going to pay this by the compensating of the Jews' property and wealth. That's exactly what he's going to do, probably. And we saw that flash forward what? To World War II. What exactly did the Germans do to the Jews' property? They took it. They took it. That's what they did. And so we, is there anything new under the sun? No. It's been going on a long time. So I just want you to get historically a context of how all this is working. And you say, I mean, because you can read this and without thinking about it that way, well, why would Haman want to do this? Well, beyond getting revenge, but likely also just as equally motivated as what? Wealth. I'm going to get rid of my enemy that I hate, and I'm going to do what in the process? I'm going to get rich. So King Xerxes, you don't worry about a thing. I'm going to pay for these assassins out of the royal treasury. That's exactly what he's going to do. And he's got it all worked out, doesn't he? He's in a position of power. He's in a position of influence. He's got the king's ear. He's manipulate the king. The king's going to set the edict. They're going to determine the month. It's going to happen, remember, 12 months from when they roll that dice. And it's going to happen also, what we say, during Passover. Hello? God's not mentioned in the book of Esther by name one time, but he's all over the book. And here's another example. We said, Haman is going to try to do this 12 months from now during a time when God did what for his people in Egypt? He saved them from a tyrant Pharaoh. Right? Another one of these petty, childish, views themselves as deity God-like, and God's going to just wipe the floor with Pharaoh historically. Historically, we know that happened. You know, the Jews, the Hebrews have always been on the bottom, haven't they? Yeah, always have. And yet God preserves his people, of course, to bring about Jesus, his son. We know that is the purpose and point of all that. All right, so let's get into this now. Chapter 4, verse 1. When Mordecai learned of all that had been. Oh, back up. Chapter 3, verse 15. They're going to send out couriers throughout all of the empire with this edict that they're going to dispatch these assassins to kill, destroy all the Jews, young, old, women, children, on a single day, the 13th day, the 12th month of the month of Adar, what's it say at the end of verse 13 of Esther 3? And to plunder their what? See, what's really the drive? I think it's the wealth. I think it's the taking of their possessions. And anyway, and a copy of the text and the edict was issued, and the law was made, and so it went out, and what happens? Couriers go out, and they spread it throughout the Persian Empire, and what does it say there? It's a contrast. Look at that, how chapter 3 ends. Haman sat down to what? He's full of himself, isn't he? With the king. Look what we've done. Look what I've done. But the Jews, and throughout the what? What's it say? Throughout Susa, there's chaos. They're perplexed. They're bewildered. And that's how it ends in chapter 3. Okay, so chapter 4, Mordecai, when he learns, verse 1, someone read 1 through 3. Who's got that for me? Esther 4. Okay, Marcia?
When Mordecai heard about all that had been done, he tore his clothes. Then he put on sackcloth, put ashes on his head, and went out into the city crying loudly. But Mordecai went only as far as the king's gate. No one was allowed to enter the gate dressed in sackcloth. In every province where the king's command had come, there was much crying and sadness among the Jews. They were fasting and crying loudly. Many Jews were lying on the ground dressed in sackcloth with ashes on their heads.
Okay, so we got this whole reaction of Mordecai and the people. What's their reaction? Yeah. They're afraid, no doubt. They're grieving. It's a death sentence. And how do they express that here? Kind of this, what? They cry loudly. What do they put on? All right, sackcloth. And ashes. But sackcloth. So, goat's hair. It's made out of. I guess the closest thing is a gunny sack. Have you ever had a gunny sack? A what? Yeah. How does that gunny sack feel? How's that? It's kind of rough. Right. Itchy. So they put on this. Then they take some coals from the fire and they put the ashes. What are they indicating? First of all, they're saying, I'm going to put something on that's going to cause me discomfort. I'm going to put something on my face, my forehead, ashes. Do I care how I look and how I feel? Because of, why? Because I'm what? I'm mourning. I'm upset. Have you ever been there? You ever been there with grief? Or you're like, I don't care what I look like. I don't care. Yeah. Yeah. You're just paralyzed. You're just afraid. You're sad. Can't get out of bed. Ever seen somebody can't get out of bed? Can't get out of bed? Yeah.
Is there a meaning that they use ashes instead of dirt? I mean, why
Well, that put that coal on your face and you'll feel it. Yeah, it's a mark. It's an indication that is not going to go away very quickly, and it's another indication of their suffering. And so, again, we in the West, we tend to grieve what? Very quietly. I'm upset, and I don't want to show a lot of that. Ancient Near Eastern, and to this very day, different culture. You ever seen funerals over in, look at this terrible thing that's going on between the Palestinians and Israel. And I don't care which side politically. I know we're seeing stuff in our country that's sickening in some of the protests and things. But there are good, innocent people on both sides who are suffering, women and children, the elderly. It's just terrible. But you see when Israelis lose people, the Palestinians, what are they doing in the streets for the funerals? Wailing. They got the body, they got the coffin up there, what are they showing? That they're upset, right? And that's what Mordecai is going to put on a show. Yeah, Ivana?
Didn't they even used to hire people to wail?
Yeah, they would hire people. Yeah, if you couldn't, you need to make more commotion or you can't have enough family and friends, we'll hire people. And so Mordecai is going to put on a show. Now, it's not a show. There's two things I want to say about this. One, it's not a show. He is devastated. But two, he's purposefully in his grief. Because you're going to have this interesting exchange between him and his cousin, right? His niece. He's the uncle, older uncle. She's pretty much going to be like, knock it off, uncle. Go put on some clothes. Stop this. And so he is sincere, but he's doing it directly and purposefully for a reason. And so he's at the gate. We've talked about that gate was the entrance to the palace. That's where business was conducted. And there was great mourning. Verse 4, when Esther's eunuchs and female attendants came and told her about Mordecai, she was in great distress. Now, two things here. The indication is she doesn't know about the edict. Palace life was very segregated. That's good. Insulated. They lived in a what's the word I'm looking for? A bubble. Well, a bubble. It was a cocoon. And so she apparently doesn't know about the edict. She's distressed, not for her people. She doesn't know about this, apparently. She's distressed because of the way her uncle's acting. Now, again, what have they tried to keep, Mordecai and Esther? Low profile, right? And now, the worst thing maybe that could happen is her uncle is out here carrying on outside the palace in such a way. Yeah. And so, I just love this, so Esther summons one of her, the king's eunuchs assigned to attend her, Hathach, and she says, find out what's troubling Mordecai. See, she don't know. She don't know about the edict. It's insulated. It's a bubble, as we said. So Hathach went out to Mordecai in the open square of the city in front of the king's gate. Mordecai told him everything that had happened to him, including the exact amount of money of Haman had promised to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. He also gave, now look here, Mordecai, he comes prepared. He's got show and tell here. He also has a copy of the text of the edict of their annihilation, which had been published in Susa. See, what we say, Mordecai, he works for the government. Now, he's not number two like Haman, but he's up there. He's not just some nobody in the empire. And so he's got people in the know. He's got a copy of the edict. And so to show Esther and explain to her. And he told him to instruct her to go. See, he can't have, what do we say? He can't walk in there and see his niece anymore, can he? What do we say? The harem, these Eastern men would have these women who they would take into their palace, that they would have sex with regularly, besides their queen, the wife. And they did not see their family. They did not go out of the palace. They were secluded, isolated forever. It's awful. It's ownership, exactly what it is, Jeff. And so Mordecai can't go in there and talk to her. So they have to have these messages go back and forth. And he wants Esther to go into the king's presence and what? There in verse 8. Yeah. Beg for what? Mercy. Hathach went back and reported to Esther what Mordecai had said. Then she instructed him to say to Mordecai, all the king's officials and the people of the royal provinces know that any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law. It's capital offense in essence. They will be put to death unless the king extends the golden scepter to them and spares their lives. But 30 days have passed since I was called to go into his presence. So, I mean, what is she saying? First of all, this law, I mean, they're real serious about these laws that you can't revoke. When they make a law, the Persians, that's it. And so you have to be summoned to come into the king's presence. You can't stroll in there. You can't walk in there, queen included, Queen Esther. And if you do, it's a capital punishment. It's death. Cuts down on the complaints real quick, huh? Now the middle guys, whew, their phones may have been busy all day, every day. But she says, the only way that he could, if he spared you, if he, made another edict quickly, and that is extended his golden scepter. But she says, it's been 30 days. He hadn't called me. I'm the queen. I haven't talked to him for 30 days. And so you see this, so, I mean, what are her options? I mean, she don't have a lot of options, right? By the way, has she ever, it's in the text, has she always complied with Mordecai? Yeah. Now this is being tested. You're asking me to do something that is what? Against the law, and puts me at what? Puts me at risk. All this we've worked for, we've kept our identity, we've been quiet, we've been faithful, we've been loyal, we've been good citizens of the Persian Empire, we've kept our Jewish identity hidden. I was, out of all these women that were brought to replace Vashti, I was the one chosen, partly, I believe, because she was distinct and different. And now I'm queen, and now you want me to risk it all? Right? It's tough. I mean, put yourself in Esther's position. This is going to be a test like none other to her to her faith. Mordecai is asking her to. I mean, what? Look at Mordecai's response here. Someone get 12 through 14. Who's got that? Okay, Kathy, have Esther 4.
So they told Mordecai Esther's words, and Mordecai told them to answer Esther, do not think in your heart that you will escape in the king's palace any more than all the other Jews. For if you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arrive for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. Yet who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this.
Okay, now obviously this is the most familiar chapter, most familiar verses in the book. It's our key verse. We talked about that a few weeks ago. We introduced it. Who knows if you've not come to the position, royal position, for such a time as this. So we've talked a little about the providence of God and the hand of God, and we'll come back to that as well. But Mordecai's words are real direct, aren't they? This is a time to be direct. And he says to her what? Yeah, you're behind these walls in this palace. You're insulated. You think you're protected. You think if you keep your identity secret, Haman won't find out? Haman already has found out who Mordecai is, who he is, right? You're going to be what? You're going to be found out. And the law is the law. We've already seen that. It'll apply to the queen just as much as anybody else, won't it? You won't escape. I mean, isn't that what keeps a lot of times us from doing and acting? And it's the fear, right? Of, well, what could happen? But the fact of the matter is no one's going to get out of life alive. We're all going to suffer, and we're all ultimately going to physically die unless the Lord comes back. We're all going to face hardship. I mean, Jesus' parable of the wise man and the foolish man are, they both are going to have storms and trials, right? You're not going to escape persecution. You're not going to escape hardship, Esther. You know, this is coming to you. And often we self-preserve, make acts of self-preservation when it comes to our faith and our life so that we can keep it and save it. But Jesus, of course, remember what he says? You got to give it. You got to be willing to lay it down for me. Because if you hold it, keep it to yourself, you'll lose it. And he says to Esther, no, you're not going to be spared. You won't escape. Now, I love also what he says here. Verse 14. Look at verse 14. Don't you see faith here in Mordecai's words? If you remain silent, relief in what? How does he know that? Mordecai, where are you coming up with that? Don't you know the king's law has been made? It can't be reversed. And on the 12th month of Nisan, you're going to be exterminated. All the people. It's been an edict, and Haman's going to pay into the royal treasury. And, well, what does Mordecai know, apparently? What's Mordecai's faith, apparently, in and grounded? He knows what? He knows God. What about God in the Bible? It's happened before. He takes care of his people. Is this the first tyrant kind of madman, so to speak? I mean, I know maybe Xerxes isn't, madman like, but still, drunk on power, ego, childish. I mean, is this the first time God's people have faced this? No. No, not his first rodeo. Yeah. You go back to, the Egyptians, and you go back to the Assyrians. Remember that time Sennacherib came in and he surrounded Jerusalem? But you remember what it says? He did not take the city. We've got Sennacherib's, there's the artwork, the image of in his, I think, what's the thing called? I had a brain freeze. But we've got Sennacherib, the Assyrian king, showing how he plundered all these different countries. He brags about it in his writings. We have that historically. Do you know what he doesn't? He talks about he besieges Jerusalem. You know what Sennacherib historically in his writings doesn't say he did to Jerusalem? Took Jerusalem. Because the Bible, Old Testament, tells us he was pushed back his army. So you've got Sennacherib, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, Nebuchadnezzar. Was he full of himself? Yeah. You must pray to me and no other. You must, when you hear the sound of the trumpet, you must what? The golden image that I made, you must what? And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said no, and they said, we won't do it. And they said, even if we perish, basically, right? Remember? We're not going to do it. God can deliver us, but even if he doesn't. And I think Mordecai probably has that same attitude. God's going to save his people. Whether he saves me, I don't know. But he has this faith in God. And he's calling out Esther's what? Her faith. Because Esther has, apparently Mordecai has been taught the law. Apparently Mordecai knows God. He's got this determination that God's going to deliver his people. He likely has taught his niece the same, hasn't he? Yes. But maybe her faith with the keeping her identity secret and now that she's the queen and, you know, she's insulated and she's well and she's fed well and she's, you know, so to speak, maybe she's forgetting. Testing her family values, yeah. It's a, you know, whatever it is, he's calling out her to be courageous, to be a people of faith. Every time in the Hebrew writer, in Hebrews 11, what do the great men and women do? They just believe only? By faith, what do the men and women in Hebrews 11? They have what, Jeff? Actions. Abel offered what? A better sacrifice. Noah did what? Built. Moses chose to suffer with the people of God that enjoy the passing pleasure of sin. Rahab, right, hid the spies. The Israelites marched around what? Jericho. Abraham, the father of the faith, right, who believed in the Lord and it was credited to him righteousness when he was called to offer his son, what? Obeyed. Even go back before that when he was called, Hebrews 11:8 says, by faith when he was called, obeyed. That's going to get into a little bit of the sermon this morning. But it is the one word that best summarizes following God, a disciple. It's to be obedient. When you whittle it all down, when you get it all down to the bottom line, what is the bottom line of being a faithful follower of God, a believer in God? It means to trust Him and to what? Do what He says. That's where it's at. And that's where it parts with most people, doesn't it? Because it's easy to come to church this morning in Bible class and sing and pray and put in some money and take a little bit of juice and cup. I mean, is it hard to believe here this morning? Not really, no. You're surrounded by some good people. We're going to have some good singing. You know, we'll see how the sermon goes, but I think it'll be all right, moms. I try to have something, but you're going to have an easy time believing. What's not going to be so easy is when you walk out this door, especially come tomorrow morning at school, at work. When you're back around the darkness, what are we talking about on Wednesday nights? The darkness, and you're the only one that's shining the light. Now will I believe? Will I act? And that's what Esther is being called upon to do. And you see that here in this incredible statement. And so look what she says here. Look at her response here as we see her actions. Then Esther sent. We've talked a little about the providence of God. I just want you to note that again in verse 14. He tells her, how do you know you haven't come to your royal position for such a time as this? God has got you here, Esther, likely for a reason. The providence of God is God directing the affairs of life, of men and women, of people, of situations, of circumstances, but He does not do that supernaturally. What I mean by that, He doesn't do that miraculously. Now, sometimes when God wants to do something, it's so obvious, He'll part the Red Sea, right? He will do something supernatural in that sense. But that's not really God's main mode of operation. But does it mean any less that God is active? Does it mean any less that God is not incredible and amazing and powerful and how He's and in one sense it's almost even more awe-inspiring that He can, like chess pieces on a board, what can He do? Yeah, but He's not like just taking them over, right? Like matter of fact, He often uses these, especially these kings. These kings actually think they've got one up on God, right, and God's people. And the Lord is often like, what? I got you right where I want you. You think you're...
Well, they usually think they're the ones
Yeah.
that are in total control.
Yeah. And God is like, you're playing right into my plan. I put you there, and for a reason, I built you up, now I'm going to bring you down. And by the way, the same with Satan, by the way. Satan did not know the plan of God. Okay? He thought if Jesus is killed, he wins. So he's happy when Jesus is crucified. But he didn't realize that that death was playing right into what? The plan of God. Satan's not omnipotent, all-knowing, omniscient. He don't know. And he's playing right into the hand of God. Yeah, you want to kill my son. You want to kill the Savior. Perfect. That's exactly my plan. Because in doing that, actually, Satan was signing, what was he signing in reality? His own death warrant. Oh, wait a minute. What have we said about Haman? What's the description? He's the enemy of what? And what did I say? He really represents Satan. The enemy of God's people. And yet Satan thinks he's on top of things. And he was signing his own defeat when Jesus was crucified and triumphantly resurrected. And so it's the same here. And so we see God's providence. Esther sent the reply to Mordecai, "Go gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish." So Mordecai went away and carried out all of Esther's instructions. What's her plan involve here, by the way? Who does she include? Is she going alone on all this? Now, does she have to go alone in front of the king? But who does she ask for help? And the what? The Jewish. And to do what? To fast. Fasting, prayer would often be associated. So she's going to have to do this very difficult task that's going to threaten her life, if you will. She faces this great moment of decision, but she doesn't go alone. She asked for the support of her fellow Jews with this fasting and would be a recognition of praying. And I think that's something there for us. I mean, that's a part of one of the reasons we've started these kingdom prayers. We're asking you to help us, our church, our leaders, accomplish the will of God, the kingdom plan, purposes, kingdom prayers. We're asking you for 30 days each month to pray that prayer every day. You're going to pray for the elders. Now, you can't be an elder. I mean, most people aren't going to be an elder. Most of you aren't going to be a preacher. But you can do what for your elders? You can do what for your preacher? You can do what for your Bible school? You can do what for your missionaries? You can do what? You see what each has to bear their own burden, right? You can't carry somebody else's responsibility, but what can we do? We can join in with each other in praying and supporting and encouraging, and that's what she's doing here. She is seeking her community of people. She also, I know that was the bell, she's also a similarity to Jesus. Hello? Now, she's going to say, first of all, the king's law cannot be revoked. What's God's law when it comes to sin? The wages of sin is what? Death. And so God, you can't change that. Moral living, kindness, compassion, mercy, benevolence. We can do all that in humanitarian efforts. It will not take care of the sin problem, the guilt that all of us have when we sin. And the only thing that could remedy that is death. And that was ultimately the holy, righteous death of God himself, Jesus. And so that's what Galatians says. The demands of the law have to be met. And so she says, if I'll go before the king. And of course, Jesus, he went to the cross. And she says, if I perish, right? But Jesus did what? Perish. Just like Ruth. Your people, my people. Where you die, I'll die. Jesus was the type. He was the foreshadowing. He did die, and we become his people. And Esther is a type of Jesus as well. Did you notice 3 days? Hello? Isn't that good? There's so much here in this little, oh man. So we'll come back to kind of summarize chapter 4 and kind of just a couple of final thoughts. And there's a lot to cover here. I tried to move a little bit quicker, but we'll come back and maybe have any questions or see if we can make some final thoughts on chapter 4 here. Before we read in chapter 5, though. All right.
Glorify thy